Live from an occupied nation's capital, you're in the war room. It is Tuesday, the 26th of January, the year of our Lord 2021. Now with the podcast, over 31 million downloads. We're live nationwide on the John Fredericks Radio Network, on Dish Channel 219 up on the Bird, on Comcast Channel 113, and also with our partners, Real America's Voice, streaming service for the Trump Revolution everywhere. Also on Rumble, Roku, Pluto, everywhere, and simulcast in Mandarin on G News and GTV. I want to thank everybody that reaches out to the Chinese diaspora. And today, later in the D segment, we're going to have a Chinese, overseas Chinese whistleblower come on and talk to us about the takedown of the Chinese Communist Party. I want to start, though, in Texas. This morning we talked to you about the amnesty bill being broken apart, shattered in the first week of Biden's administration. Can't even bring forward their biggest piece of legislation. They're coming with these radical executive orders. And Ken Paxton, the patriotic attorney general, the great state of Texas, confronting the Biden administration everywhere. He says he'll cooperate where it's legal and constitutional, and he'll stand up for Texans and for the Constitution where they deem it's not. Huge win today in court with the TRO. Attorney General Paxton, can you get our audience up to date on exactly what's happening?
Yes, so I believe it was Friday. We filed a lawsuit. We asked for a temporary restraining order, which is short term, to give us time to prepare for a permanent injunction, and then ultimately to give us time to argue in front of the court the merits of our case, which we think are very strong. But we don't want a lot of damage being done to our state in the time that we're waiting to be heard on the merits and a decision to be made. So today was a very, very successful day for us, and I think a good day for not just Texas, but the entire country. We got a temporary restraining order so that the administration, the Biden administration, cannot stop doing its job, which is to follow federal law as it relates to deportations and immigration law.
What was the problem you had with his deportations specifically? What problem did the state of Texas have with his deportation order?
So our problem is that he's not following federal law, and he's not following his constitutional duty to execute on that federal law. And the consequences for my state are great. He's announced basically that if you want to come to our country, our state, just come on in. And now we've got potentially thousands of people coming up from Central America to our country. And there's, health risks as it relates to COVID and other diseases. There's safety risks. Every time we have a border crossing, we don't know if that person's a criminal or a potential criminal. And then we have the immense costs that the federal government does not fund for our state. They have to come up with the money to pay for education because we're required to educate people to come to our country. We're required to deal with healthcare costs. And so all of that, transportation costs, the list goes on, and it's an expensive proposition for us that's unfunded by the federal government. And then there is just this small problem that they're not following federal law.
So you got a 12-day TRO. Walk our audience through what's the next step. Do you go back in 12 days and you argue? This is not you ask for a permanent injunction until then you can argue a broader case?
Yes, that's exactly right. So we want time, because our argument is that the state suffers irreparable harm, that we can't undo it. And once it's been done, there are people that are here that are affecting our lives. And so we need that to stop for now while we have the chance to prepare our case, show the court that this is a violation of federal law.
Okay, one last thing. I want to pull the camera back. I think there's 17 EOs he signed in the first couple of days. I think they're going to be 25 or 30 by the end of this week. They just keep coming in different verticals. We had the one the other day about Title IX. We talked to you about what other, are you going to contest a number of these? How many are you going to contest? Because we've said that Texas and Florida, the attorney generals there are on the front line of this essentially confrontation with the Biden administration where they deem it's illegal or unconstitutional.
So we're going to be looking at everything. We're an energy state. We feel like we're going to have some issues with energy issues with, the EPA. We're looking at the transgender changes. There's all kinds of issues we're going to be looking at. And what our primary sort of focus is are these constitutions? Is he following law, or is he making up new law? Is he basically stepping over his bounds and stepping into the purview of Congress, or is he doing his job executing the law? And if he's doing his job, we're going to stay out of the way. If he's not, we're going to be in the way as much as possible.
Attorney General Paxton, what are your social media coordinates? How do people follow you during the day? Because you're becoming one of the rising stars of the Republican Party.
Yeah, I finally have it. At Texas AG. There you go. There's my Twitter handle.
Attorney General Paxton, thank you very much. I know you're incredibly busy. Thanks for taking time and sharing it with the War Room audience.
Hey, absolutely. Glad to be on, and it is a big day. It's a small victory, but it is a victory, and we're grateful for it.
Victory begets victory. Thank you very much, sir. We talked to the folks this morning. Jack Posobiec's in studio co-host. We're going to bring in Peter Navarro now. We talked about the amnesty bill being essentially pulled and they're going to break it down in little pieces because they can't get the overall pass because the resistance they're seeing already to this radical agenda. Peter Navarro, Dr. Peter Navarro, it's a big victory down there on these deportations, particularly the stopping of deportations of criminal aliens. You were part of that. You were the president's principal advisors about trade. Obviously, NAFTA was huge. What happens at the border is huge. You were also all over. You were one of the top voices on the task force about COVID. Talk to us about the wall, the border, and what Ken Paxton and people are doing down there.
Steve, let's start with a little high irony. I was out on the mall here in Washington today, and guess what? This wall is still covering Capitol Hill, and I would say to Mr. Biden, tear down that wall, Mr. Biden. Tear down that wall. You cannot tear down the wall down south on the argument that it's okay to have millions of illegal aliens flood over and then keep American citizens from walking up that hill to look at the building and maybe express peacefully what's on their mind. But it's all barbed wire, Steve. Now,
hang on, Peter, before we go, because the mainstream media is not showing this and Fox is not showing this. You went down there for the first time. How shocked were you? Because we're up here on Capitol Hill, and I'm telling you, around the Capitol, it's shocking. You feel like you're in North Korea now. How shocked were you when you went down to the mall?
Zone. I'm pretty much, I've seen it every day, kind of watching, and I was shocked today because while they've removed some of the other things around, it's troops, it's fence, and it's barbed wire completely rimming the perimeter of Capitol Hill. And you know what, Steve? I mean, with this farce of an impeachment, basically offending 74 million people who voted for Donald J. Trump, I can understand why they might be afraid in their little building there. But look, this is America, right? This is not Berlin. Mr. Biden, tear down that wall, move that wall down to El Paso and along our southern border. Because look, Steve, we've got over 20 million Americans right now out of work because of the Chinese Communist Party virus. And what Joe Biden wants to do is one of his first acts is pull in millions more of illegal aliens. I'm telling you, Steve, and I predicted this last week on your show, real wages are not going to go up, particularly for blacks and Hispanics, during the next 4 years of the entire one-term presidency of Mr. Biden. Tear down that wall. I guarantee that. And by the way, it's not just the fact that we've got cheap labor flooding over the border to put blacks and Hispanics in metropolitan areas that are already under siege from the Chinese Communist Party. It's also that strain of the virus from Brazil that's coming up. It's like the killer bee strain. That's highly contagious. So good for Ken Paxton, the Attorney General. He did a great job presenting a case to the Supreme Court, which shirked their responsibility when they refused to hear that case. But Paxton is a rising star. That border, I mean, when you compare that border now to what's on the mall, barbed wire,
it's embarrassing.
Tear down that wall.
It's embarrassing.
Nancy, Joe,
okay,
Kamala, it is embarrassing.
It's
shameful.
It's shameful, and I want to get more footage of this, Jack.
And I'm Berliner.
No, but I don't think people are seeing this enough. We're going to get more footage of this because it's pretty shocking. I want to go now. We've got a lot to cover with you. I want to get to the impeachment. They just had the vote. Rand Paul, we don't have time to play his clip now, but he lit them up today. And they had a vote where only 5, and you can guess them, the guys that were anti-you, Toomey, Sass, the same Murkowski, Romney, right, and Collins threw her thing in, but she won't vote at the end. She'll waver and then vote not. So with only 5, and Jack, you've got some breaking news. Jack, you got some breaking news that you heard coming out of the White House?
We actually heard from the White House that, who is a White House official that's in there, that when Joe Biden saw that only 5 Republicans bucked the line and crossed over, he said, it's over.
So Biden knows it's over. What is this all about, Navarro? You even had Mitch McConnell. Even Mitch didn't vote for this. It was big talk, last week. Nope. He's going to vote to convict. Tell me, is this just a total fiasco? Is this just a farce? All they want to do is beat down Donald Trump now. They got no chance of going through this whole exercise of even getting close to conviction. How big a farce is this?
The idea is to stick a stake in the heart, not just of Donald J. Trump, but in the heart of the MAGA movement. But I think they're dramatically overplaying their hand. And I think here's what the fear is on Capitol Hill. And Nancy Pelosi made a fundamental mistake. Her original sin in those impeachment articles was to make the claim that Donald J. Trump falsely claimed that the election was stolen. And the best argument, of course, against that are the receipts. And as you know, Steve, the Navarro report, the 3 volumes, lays out chapter and verse that, in fact, Donald Trump won that election. This election was stolen from Donald Trump, and they are afraid that if there's an extended trial, that will be presented on the floor, and Joe Biden's approval rating will start heading even further south towards that border and meet all those illegal aliens that are coming through to steal our jobs and spread the virus. So this is an interesting thing. They want to stop him from running for president. I'd love to see the president 45 announced tomorrow for 2024, and then really shake these people up and really take it to them, because this election was stolen. We have the receipts across 6 battleground states. We know with some precision how many votes were potentially illegal across subcategories. And here's the punchline. The narrow Biden victory margins in all 6 of those states are dwarfed by the number of potential illegal votes. So if they want to have an impeachment trial, that needs to be part of it. We're going to show them the receipts, and they are afraid of that.
Real quickly, I got 30 seconds for your answer. Lindsey Graham's thing is, hey, if you mention anything that Navarro just said, you're going to have 20 guys vote to convict you. If you take my strategy and take a beating, but you'll only have 5. Right now, who's right, Peter Navarro or Lindsey Graham?
Lindsey Graham is a Democrat in drag. The problem with Lindsey Graham, he voted for Blinken today. You know what when Pompeo was Secretary of State confirmation, he got 20 less votes than Anthony Blinken. And Lindsey Graham, again, he's like, I don't know, he's not one of the MAGA people, okay? He's a Democrat in disguise, and shame on Lindsey Graham. And what all they're trying to do is suppress this information that this election was stolen. And Lindsey is just doing his usual flitting around Lindsey thing, trying to get in front of a camera like Lindsey always does, and shame on him for what he did today. Shame on him for what he's trying to do that is president.
Okay, short commercial break. Posobiec and Bannon will be back with Navarro. We're going to talk about this vote on Tony Blinken, confirmed as Secretary of State, the globalist that supported him. All next, War and Pandemic.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, Tony Blinken got confirmed today by the Senate to replace Mike Pompeo as Secretary of State. Very disturbing vote, Mr. Jack Posobiec. I think we see now all becoming clear who the globalists in the Republican Party are in the Senate and who the America First nationalists are.
Well, this is really interesting. So, of course, all 50 Democrats voted for Blinken. That was not to be surprised. But you also saw 28 Republican names cross over the aisle and vote for Blinken. Look, this is the same Tony Blinken where we've got questions about your tenure at the Penn Biden Center, the CCP money that went to the University of Pennsylvania during that time. We know about it. We're asking the questions. What's going on? Tony Blinken, you know, right? But look at this. Lindsey Graham, some of these names. Tillis, Romney, Haggerty, Marco Rubio. Rubio.
So let's go there. Navarro, Rubio's toughened up on China under your tutelage. What is going on here? Yeah. I want you to go back to Pompeo. You just made the comparison when Pompeo was put up as Secretary of State. Walk us through the comparison to Blinken and Pompeo about this vote.
Mike only got 57 votes, which means there was very few crossovers on the Dem side. And every time we sent somebody up for confirmation, Schumer would hold it and stretch out everything. So we were unable to get appointments, and they never crossed over. Now you've got like Lindsey Graham, globalist, Rubio, globalist. Shame on Haggerty, man. I loved Haggerty, man. He was like he should not have done that in loyalty to President Trump. But that's just wrong. But here's the thing: it's like Mitch McConnell seems to be working closely with the Democrats to accelerate these confirmations, when in fact, when Mitch was Senate Majority Leader, he couldn't get Schumer to do anything. So what I'm worried about is they're going to quickly pack these bureaucracies, and that interagency process is going to
by the way,
one at us, and they're going to undo everything.
In the confirmation here today, we'll actually have the audio tomorrow. Ted Cruz lights up the Commerce nominee about the whole thing about the companies that we're supposed to stop providing capital for. The Commerce Department, and the headline in the South China Morning Post is very different than the reality. I thought she was very weak when it came to the CCP. What do you say, Dr. Navarro?
Yeah, I mean, the Commerce Department, surprisingly enough, probably was the best hammer that we had in the administration to hit knockout punches on specific sectors and companies. And we did that a lot. If we have somebody in there who reverts to the globalist mean, as it looks like we're going to do, they'll probably start with, for example, lightening back up on Huawei, and we'll lose 5G. Losing 5G alone, this is the telecommunications network that hooks up all the Internet of Things. That is like a gift to the Chinese Communist Party to take our economy and, Steve, our military apart. So everything I'm looking at, I'm not seeing good news. And on the Buy American front, I went over that one more time, and I realized that Biden basically repealed two key executive orders that I worked really hard on, that basically wipes out a lot of money for infrastructure. And lo and behold, the post office is now probably going to buy trucks from Turkey instead of Oshkosh, Wisconsin. So this is termites in the house.
Hold it. Stop. Hang on. They're sitting there touting. Hold it. They're sitting there touting. He's signing these executive orders to Buy American to do what Donald Trump and Peter Navarro just talked about. He said he's doing. You're saying in the executive order they're actually reversing things
Devil in the details. Devil in the details. They repealed two executive orders that I personally drafted for the president. One of them extended Buy American to what's called federal financial assistance. So, example, if the federal government gave a state money to buy stuff, Buy American would apply. They stripped that. I mean, shame on them. And then the United States Post Office, I mean, they buy like huge fleets of trucks. They're about to award a contract, and it could either go to Oshkosh, Wisconsin, or somewhere in Turkey or India. And guess what? What the Biden crew probably is going to do is let the globalists take over. So everything I'm seeing, Steve, is bad with Joe Biden with respect to MAGA, taking care of blue-collar workers, putting pressure on blacks and Hispanics with his flood of cheap labor across the border. And shame on the Republican senators for crossing over and voting in large numbers for these Biden appointments who are nothing but globalists who want to go back to the status quo ante. But that's the power of the multinational corporations that feed the Republican beast in this country.
Okay, hang on for a second. I want to talk about, we're 24 hours after the Davos speech of Xi. You called the victory lap. I call it the throwdown. Crickets from the White House, Mr. Jack Posobiec?
It's been absolute crickets. Even when they mention it to Jen Psaki, she says something about, we have to work on our relationship with China. We've got a long relationship. The fact of the matter is, she went on that speech. He proclaimed, remember, it was a proclamation of the global mandate of heaven for the Chinese Communist Party. No response whatsoever from the White House.
Navarro, you know how important the optics are in this relationship, in this confrontation. Yeah. Tell the American people right now, what do you think, how could possibly the White House, President Trump would have been on the trigger on a tweet instantaneously, a series of tweets. How much does it damage what you guys brought us to as far as this confrontation of standing up the Chinese Communist Party and getting back to a level playing field to have total crickets out of the administration?
I got a new drinking game for you, Steve. Every time Psaki mentions strategic patience or negotiations or globalism, we hit a shot of Psaki, right? That's all we're going to do is we're going to get drunk with rhetoric, and look, the CCP, Xi Jinping, they're feeling their oats. They're coming at us hard. They're going to press and probe. And here's the thing: the more weakness Biden and Psaki and these other people and Blinken show right now, the more trouble they're going to be in, because that's like an invitation to Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping was afraid of what Donald Trump would do if he was provoked. There is no such fear right now in Beijing, and they're going to push and probe, and these people are weak. Psaki's weak, Biden's weak, Blinken's weak, Harris is weak. That person, how does that person even get nominated for that position based on that performance?
Hang on.
Yes,
is this just your hang on? Is this just your toxic masculinity coming to the forefront, or what do you mean? What's your definition of weak, Dr. Peter Navarro?
Look, Ronald Reagan, Donald Trump, you can draw a straight line between them. The doctrine was peace through strength. Okay. To the extent that the bad guys out there, whether it's Kim Jong-un, North Korea, Xi Jinping in China, whether it's the mullahs in Iran, whether it's the bad guys down in Venezuela, if they believe in the White House there's somebody there who will react strongly and forcefully, if they cross a red line, guess what? They won't cross the red line. That's not the vibe or the signal they're getting. The best way to keep peace is through strength. It's like, that's why you have a big defense budget. It's you build the arms so you never have to use them. This is, you can go through history for 5,000 years and you understand that the only way that we've had eras of peace is when there has been strength to stop the aggression of the other side. And so it's Geopolitics 101. It's John Mearsheimer 202. And that's not what we're getting. The Biden administration is getting off to a very, very bad start here on the China issue. And my fear here, Steve, is that Xi Jinping will see that and he'll start probing. Kim Jong-un, he's going to start probing. And the mullahs, they're going to start probing. And they, like John, you know what John Kerry is over in Iran? He's like an appetizer, right? It's like, hey, John, bring me some more cash here while we make our weapons. So as President Trump always loved to say, let's see what happens. But what I'm seeing now on the chessboard, Steve, is basically checkmate in a few months if we're not careful.
Wow. Okay, real quickly. Strategic. When the audience hears from Jen Psaki, strategic patience in interagency process.
Psaki, have everybody take a drink.
Should they deem that as appeasement? Is that a code word for appeasement?
Yes, of course it is. And how foolish of her to use that phrase, because that was what Obama used when he lost the Middle East. That was the whole lead from behind, right? Remember. I mean, that's the problem, Steve. You and I have a sense of history, and we remember this stuff. She gets up there and utters like strategic patience and the interagency process, and it's like, oh, we are in big, big trouble now.
Okay, Peter, we got
strategic patience is not a doctrine when China's attacking us the way they are. Information warfare, economic warfare, attacking us with the virus, crushing Hong Kong, building up their military, running in the South China Sea, flying, strafing over the Taiwan Strait. Strategic patience, how do you want to be patient with that?
Peter, what's your coordinates? How do you get to the Navarro reports? Got about 30 seconds.
Real P Navarro on Twitter, and there's NavarroReport.com. NavarroReport.com. 3 volumes of that. It's the definitive work on why Trump won the election and how the Democrat Party stole it.
Dr. Navarro, to complete this, what's your message to Joe Biden in that wall?
Tear down that wall, Joe. It looked like Berlin today, Steve. I was out on the mall. It was like foggy and gray, and I'm looking through fence and barbed wire at the Capitol, and I'm thinking, wow.
Embarrassing.
Tear down that wall. I was channeling JFK and Reagan.
Dr. Navarro, thank you very much. Short commercial break. We're going to come back with Jack Posobiec and Boris talking about the trial, war and pandemic, in a second.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
I want to do a check. I want to do a check for the producer team. Today, Mike McCormick, the author, said if he didn't speak for 45 minutes on the race, if he just stuck to the script and spoke for under 15 minutes, it would show you the 50% cognitive decline, because normally Biden would go on forever. I want to check that. I hear somebody, the War Room engine room's telling me it's 12 minutes and 40 seconds.
You saw that clip of him with he couldn't find the pen?
Yeah.
Pen?
Very disturbing. Mike McCormick, the author of Biden Unauthorized. You're to get that book. This guy's been dead spot on. I saw him on TV on India, WION, the great channel over there. We've had him on a couple of times. He called it today. He said, look, if Biden pulls a Joe Biden and talks for 45 minutes, because this is a topic he's very familiar with, he's got all the stories. If he sticks right to a script and keeps under 15 minutes, that reinforces how he's just totally programmed to just do what he does and get off stage. Real quickly, with Xi, the crickets, not just the crickets, but the strategic crickets, we're not showing anything. How's that be? You've served over in Asia. You know the Chinese. You speak Mandarin. You're a naval intelligence officer. How are they reviewing that? How are they viewing that right now?
China was looking to see how Joe Biden would respond. They sent him a test message on his very first week in office. They set the table. They set a test for him. This wasn't a trap, Joe. This was, how are you going to respond? You could have called up the commander of 7th Fleet. You could have called up the admiral and said, I want an aircraft carrier, deploy it from Yokosuka, Japan, send it right through the Taiwan Strait, entire strike group. Why not? Send it right through the Taiwan Strait to make sure that they know we mean business. President Trump sent 2 destroyers up right before he left office. There was nothing.
Well, we did it very quick. Remember, they had safe navigation. They had no guns, no radar, or anything. Right through South China Sea and safe navigation. We went through like a carrier battle group supposed to go through.
I've gone through there on the Blue Ridge, escorted by Chinese destroyers.
Unbelievable.
That's fun.
Okay, let's play this. I want to play. We got Boris Epshteyn, the top lawyer, one of the top lawyers from the campaign of President Trump. I want to play the Rand Paul. Can we play the Rand Paul clip right now? I want him to hear that and respond to it. Rand Paul on the floor of the Senate today.
Hyper-partisan Democrats are about to drag our great country down into the gutter of rancor and vitriol, the likes of which has never been seen in our nation's history. Instead of doing the nation's work with their new majorities in the House, the Senate, and the executive branch, Democrats are wasting the nation's time on a partisan vendetta against a man no longer in office. It's almost as if they have no ability to exist except in opposition to Donald Trump. Without him as their boogeyman, they might have to legislate and to actually convince Americans that their policy prescriptions are the right ones. Democrats are about to do something no self-respecting senator has ever stooped to. Democrats are insisting the election is actually not over And so they insist on regurgitating the bitterness of the election. This acrimony they are about to unleash has never before been tried. Why? Because calmer heads have typically prevailed in our history and allowed public opinion to cast blame where blame is deserved.
Okay, I want to bring in Boris Epshteyn right now. Boris, what are your observations, commentary on Senator Rand Paul today on the floor of the Senate?
Steve, thanks so much for having me. Rand Paul is right on point. Senator Paul is right on point. I just tweeted this out, that as he said in his tweet, this sham of an impeachment trial, in quotes, is dead on arrival. But his comments about Democrats truly cutting through, truly showing just how cynical the Democrat Party is, and that they do not want attention on what Joe Biden has been doing in his first now almost week in office. The 11,000 jobs killed with the cancellation of the Keystone Pipeline. The fact that that transgender are now allowed to compete in women's sports. So people who are born as male are not allowed to compete in women's sports, are now allowed to compete in women's sports in our high school. The fact that, as you were just discussing, we are already in just the first week giving ground to China throughout the world and allowing China into our electric grid, as well as backstabbing Taiwan. So the Democrats don't want to talk about it. They continue to have terrible Trump derangement syndrome,
Yep.
and that's what this comes out of. And the final vote to dismiss did fail. Five Republicans did vote with Democrats to not dismiss. Here's who they are: Mitt Romney of Utah, Susan Collins of Maine, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, Ben Sass of Nebraska, and then Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania. I urge all Republicans, the whole MAGA movement, the whole MAGA crowd in those states to think long and hard. If those five senators represent their constituents in their states, and I will tell you, from my perspective, they absolutely do not.
Okay, let me go. Okay, those are the five haters. But that showed you that 55-45. 45 senators want to get this.
55-45, that's right.
55-45. Is Lindsey Graham right? Although the president's going to get crushed as they come in with this prosecution. Is Lindsey Graham right and Peter Navarro and Boris Epshteyn and Steve Bannon wrong? Is it right just because now there's not going to be a conviction, right, on this? It's clear. It's going to be a sham, but it's just going to be a beat down on Trump. But is Lindsey Graham's strategy right? Let's just get through this thing, take the hits, and move on? Or do you still, as Peter Navarro and I still say, no, you got to show the receipts. This is your chance in front of the nation and the world to make your case of why this was not a lie. In fact, this was a truth. What is a lie is that Joe Biden is actually in the Oval Office.
Well, here's my concern. If the Democrats were to say that we are not going to spend days and days and days attacking President Trump, falsely attacking President Trump, falsely claiming that he incited, falsely accusing him of insurrection, if Democrats promise to just talk process, well, that's fine. Then it's okay to just talk process. But if it's going to be like the MSNBC hour-long special where I was the only pro-Trump voice out of probably 20 on Sunday night with Ari Melber, and it's going to be one continuous beatdown, as you said, one continuous assault on everything President Trump has said and done since running for office in 2015, I think that it is incumbent upon the defense to put on defense and say, here's why President Trump did not incite, because he said march peacefully and patriotically. And here's why it is not promulgating a quote-unquote big lie to question the integrity of this election, to talk about the over 200,000 unlawful votes in Wisconsin, to talk about the allegedly over 400,000 unlawful votes in Georgia, to talk about the violations of Article 2, which says that state legislatures are the only entities that determine.
So you're still okay. So hang on. You're still because you know what they're going to do. You saw in the MSNBC special, they're coming hard. So you're still a guy who says we got to show the receipts. Last thing, because I'm burning time here. You're not only a lawyer. You were also the head of the circuits program in 2016. You were on all the major networks. You were too good defending Trump, so they said we don't want Boris anymore. I got to have your commentary and observations about Jen Psaki. Is that the best way to present what Biden's trying to do? Because now it's to the point, I think you saw today, it's kind of a fiasco. She's not up to speed. First off, she's not a good speaker. She can't think on her feet. But it's like she doesn't brief herself or her staff doesn't brief her. She's not prepared when she comes up there. What say you, Boris?
So I had the honor, as you said, of running the surrogate operation from a messaging perspective in 2016. I also had the honor of being at the White House as assistant communications director. And I remember those meetings in the press secretary's office before he was going out there, before Sean went out there to brief. The key is to make sure that the press secretary is prepared and has various key bullet points on each subject, and then delivers them with confidence. And Jem Psaki just isn't doing that, and it's very disappointing. And here's my worry: it's one thing for us as Republicans. Obviously, we could only be so objective to go criticize her, but the vision she's putting out to the world, the perspective she's putting out to our adversaries, to China, to Iran, to Russia, and to our allies, is of weakness. And we cannot go out there and portray weakness of the Americans, of the United States of America, of the American president, no matter who it is, to the rest of the world. She's got to get better. And if she doesn't get better, Joe Biden or whoever is controlling Joe Biden, Ron Klain, the chief of staff, who's been around a long time. Klain's been around since the Gore, since he was chief of staff for VP Gore back in the 90s. He's got to pull the plug and replace it with somebody who can go out there, look at the camera, look at the people who are asking the questions, and deliver succinct, powerful answers.
Well,
now, if they don't believe what they're doing, if the Democrats don't believe it, then they've got to replace the policies, not just the messenger.
Boris, what are your give us your coordinates now for social media?
Thanks so much, Steve. Coordinates, Twitter, they are still cutting my followers almost by the minute. At Boris EP on Twitter, Boris_Epshteyn on Instagram, at Boris EP on Twitter, Boris_EPSHTEY on Instagram. Thanks so much for having me. God bless. Stay strong.
Thanks for taking time of your busy day. I want to turn to Prosovic. Do you get a sense, both Navarro and Boris have said it unprompted, asked that one cold, that it's a projection of disorganization and weakness right now. Do you get the same sense? And how is that looked at through the eyes of Asia, from Beijing?
Look, when you've got Jen Psaki who can't answer a question, when you've got Joe Biden up there who can't find a pen when he's going to sign what he calls signature executive orders, you've got the Politburo of the PRC, of the CCP, is looking at, they say they're going to eat this guy's lunch. They know that does not represent a threat to them. This is going back, it's turning back the table as a third administration, a third term for Barack Obama. You remember the refrain during that time? It was a soft landing. It's going to be a soft landing of what once was American exceptionalism, the American empire. We're gonna be an empire in decline, a soft decline. China's going to be able to rise now. We're going to ask for law on the sea treaties and this kind of thing. This is exactly what Xi Jinping wants. This is playing into his hands. And by the way, and I would say this to my friends on the other side of the aisle, this helps Vladimir Putin a whole lot, too, because his name came up today, and the only thing that Biden could respond was some kind of, joke about Peter Doocy. No.
I want to go to particularly the way that Trump's first term came to a conclusion with Pompeo. You're dropping hammers on Huawei.
Yes.
You're dropping hammers on Wuhan. You're dropping hammers all over the place, but particularly Wuhan. How do they see it, given everything they got jammed up on, from the CCP virus to Huawei to intrusion in the election by DNI? I mean, the last week was China, CCP. How did they then view coming in and talking about strategic patient? We're very patient, interagency, and we'll get back to you.
Look, Tony Blinken, if you go back to his confirmation hearings, Tony Blinken was actually saying, he was making the case that he agreed with Pompeo on a lot of these issues. He said, I agree on genocide of the Uyghurs. I agree on Hong Kong. I agree on human rights. But then there's no action. There's no action from the administration, and so that's what you're going to get. It's empty words again and again. And look, Navarro was just here. That's the guy who took tariffs. That's the guy who understood the economic leverage that the United States has and needs to use if we are truly going to, to use a phrase, take down the CCP.
Forbes has a study. We're going to have it tomorrow morning. We'll have it up on the screen tomorrow. Forbes has a poll out, a study that 71% of the American people will even buy something that has higher prices consistently over time if it comes from democracies and not from a totalitarian dictatorship like the Chinese Communist Party. They understand that tariffs are both economically smart and also geopolitically smart. That's the American people. Of course, it's buried down in Forbes. You don't see it on the cover of the Wall Street Journal or on the Financial Times because they're the propaganda department for the business partners of the Chinese Communist Party. Okay, we're going to take a short break. This show and other outlets out there have inspired so many overseas Chinese. We have an overseas Chinese going to join us next on her plan to take down the CCP.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, my co-host is Jack Posobiec, who's one of the top specialists in town about the CCP. One of the things that the show's so big is that it plays to a massive international audience. I want to bring in now, and we're very inspired when we get emails from people, and we were able to come into contact with someone who had written actually a thesis on how you take down the CCP. Turns out she's simply a civilian who has recently come to, over the last couple of years, to understand the threat of the CCP, particularly since she's out of mainland China now. I want to bring in Elle, one of the overseas Chinese, a whistleblower. Elle, walk us through. I was so inspired when I saw your plan of how to take down the CCP, and I told Posobiec it was like it was written at the top think tank or inside the Pentagon or over at the Commerce Department about what your ideas were. Walk us through how you came to this, because you weren't always aligned with this. How President Trump inspired you? How did you come to this? And what is your plan to take down the Chinese Communist Party?
Okay. Well, my plan is really simple. We have to look at where China is getting their power from. The reason they have grown into the beast that they are today is because the American people have funded their growth through the purchase of goods and through their capital investment. That is the source of their power. That is what they depend on to grow, and that is what they're using to coordinate this attack on the U.S. people and take over the free world with. That is the foundation of all of this.
So so our investment and our buying of their goods have given them power. How would you suggest the American people actually stop that? What is your recommendation because you know what the threat is of the Chinese Communist Party to the good people of China, to the overseas Chinese? What would you recommend to the American people, how they actually execute on that?
The American people's most powerful weapon is not the gun in their hand. It is a dollar in their pocket. It is economic warfare. You starve this Chinese paper dragon to death, and you will see the coordinated attack over the U.S. recede, because they need money and they need your money. The solution is simple. One, you don't buy Chinese goods, or you buy secondhand only so that they don't get a single penny. And two, you take out your individual investment out of Chinese companies in the stock market. They are using your money to fund their war against you. That's your blood, sweat, and tears that you used to earn that money. Now, the third step is to spread this movement. You need to educate 3 of your friends and get them to educate 3 more of their friends each. We need to spread this movement, because at the end of the day, the only power, the most powerful weapon that you have is economic. China is on the brink of an economic collapse. They cannot stand it if we overnight withhold half of the Chinese capital away from them. They will not. This is an economic war. They cannot win, because why? They have run out of their primary power. That is an unlimited capital of human supply. They have killed off most of their young people, and they cannot remain the factory of the world. That is the truth. The reason they are so aggressive is because they are facing an economic collapse, and it's going to be happening soon. What we're trying to do is we are trying to speed that up before they integrate into the American system and before the elites become undisplaceable.
Al, I want to thank you very much for sharing this. As she says, spread the word to 3 people, and they'll spend it to another 3. I want to thank you very much. I know this is your nom de guerre, so we'll protect your secrecy. But thank you very much for coming on the show today and spreading the word.
Am I able to expand on why China is in economic collapse?
Sure.
Because
Yes. Go ahead.
Most people won't understand the power of this action.
Go ahead.
Because everyone thinks China is really powerful, but in reality, they are in the brink of an economic collapse. A small push will make them fall off the cliff. They have an astronomical hidden national debt with an unstable demographic. Millions of unhappy people is a recipe for civil unrest. Their economy is a life support because they can't fix it. They are running out of young people to work in the factories because they've killed them all. China is a terrible place to do business now because of corporate theft, rising cost of production, and the constant threat of factory takeover from the CCP. Why would any factory want to work there when they're facing rising labor costs and a threat of boycott from their customer? Their currency manipulation is catching up to them, and they have ignored market forces by covering that up with money from the future, from their constant business and economic growth. Well, they are facing the end of their economic miracle. What happens when that suddenly stops? All their problems will be uncovered. Post-financial crisis, what they did was they spent as much as possible without limits to keep the Chinese people employed through state projects to prevent civil unrest. They are lending themselves money that they don't have, and more importantly, their banks don't have. And it is all implemented by incompetent party members. Now, what I want you to imagine is think about the Congress and think about what would it be like if Congress managed every single business in America. That's the level of incompetent management we're talking about. That's what's happening in China, but in a massive, massive scale. 1/4 of their own firms are loss-making, are unbelievably inefficient, and 40% of their credit is going towards financing old loans. That means they are trying to outrun their debt, but they are not running fast enough. They can't outrun this problem. All these issues are happening with no solution in sight because they cannot maintain their ability to be the manufacturer of the world. They have killed most of their young people, and they can't keep this economic engine running. Their huge GDP to debt ratio is 300%.
Wow. Hey, L, we have to bounce because we got a hard stop. I want to thank you. We'll have you back on. Just absolutely amazing, Pasovic. This is a civilian that
they can't stop the truth from getting out. We've been saying it here in the war room. The 作战室, that's war room in Chinese. They are now getting the signal. It's coming back around.
But the overseas Chinese, the Biden administration has to step up here, right? All you're seeing is weakness.
Look, for people like Elle, that's why she has to use a pseudonym when she goes out to speak her mind, even when she's already overseas, because the Biden administration isn't providing any cover for her.
We want your emails. We want your comments. We want your thoughts. We're going to start getting more listeners and viewers on here, particularly overseas Chinese. I want to stand up to this murderous regime in Beijing. We're your platform. Tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, we're going to have more breaking news. Jack Pasovic, Stephen K. Bannon. See you tomorrow morning at 10 in the War Room.